Dana, the bulkheads have closed. I'm cut off.
6 months of planning down the drain. What a mess.
Oh, crap. Hold on.
You can't help me if you can't see him, Ellie. Sit down, Strauss, or I'll blow a hole in your head. I need you to see. Enough!
Ellie.
Don't worry, I didn't hit him that hard. There's thousands of them. They're breaking apart.
Ellie, get out of there.
Oh my God, they're heading this way. Run, Strauss, run!
Ellie, come in. Ellie. Dana. Okay, I'm back. Did you say 6 months? How long have I been here?
3 years. Ever since age 7.
3 years?
Yes. Look, there's no time to explain. There's an ambulance bay around back. I'm uploading the route to your rig. They're jamming my signal.
Video games are becoming more and more about storytelling. In the early days, there wasn't much story in the video games. That was more about the very simple kind of gameplay with achievements. And these days, the real progressive video games have intricate plots and lead you through emotion the same way that a movie would.
A lot of the things that you see in here are actually represented in Dead Space. You know, the look and feel of the doors, stasis chambers, kind of like the almost medical look to the tiling, the very strong fluorescent lighting.
Only the difference in a video game versus a film, it's not a linear story. They create a setting in which you get to experience the story, and so it makes it more complex.
We're not really trying to nail exactly what things look like. We want to just get a feel for what the environment should feel like. How do we establish mood? How do we establish kind of like a background for what's happened here?
If you do one thing, one different thing, it can actually change how the end of the story happens. And that's sort of, you know, that's your inflection with the product that actually allows you to tell a different story.
Generally, when you're trying to figure out how a video game's going to work, we start to come up with some what we call epic moments. A big part of the games that we make here at Visceral contain epic moments. Times when players are just really wowed with both what they're seeing and what they're doing.
But you can tell it so many different ways that you actually have a modicum of control over it.
Traveling on a train and you're battling necromorphs and the train kind of comes off the rails, you can kind of get a feeling and see that, like, you know, there's flames and intense speed, and you're actually trapped on this train when it's kind of going haywire. So this was, this is the concept art that actually inspired the train level for Dead Space 2. A smart publisher like EA knows that it needs to cover all the different parts of the gaming public. So EA has, for example, the Sims team, which creates the Sims franchise. You know, EA has studios like Black Box who create Need for Speed and the racing games. Lucky us, we get to be the ones who focus on, mature content, shooters, third-person action games. Games that have an M rating, and so they want each one of their studios to specialize in a certain part of the pie. And so we have a Visceral Montreal, we have Visceral Shanghai, we had Visceral Melbourne until recently. So the idea of having all these different satellite studios around the world is that we can be working on video game 24 hours a day somewhere in the world. story is extremely important for Dead Space because Dead Space is very character-driven. It's all about Isaac and his experiences. It's all about the setting of being in space, in a very confined space, that feeling of claustrophobia, that feeling of darkness, quiet, fear. An interesting little bit about Isaac Clarke that you might not know is that his name, Isaac Clarke, comes from the name of two science fiction writers, Isaac Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke. And so that's where Isaac Clarke comes from. The point being is that to kind of give a hint about the kind of game you're playing here, you're playing a game that's about intellect, it's about thinking, it's a thinking man's shooter. In what we produce, we tend to focus more, when it comes to Dead Space, on people who are into story and into character.
The real key to it is that if you can identify with something in the game, you will suffer gameplay. You will go through anything because you want to find out what happens at the end.
He's not a space marine, he's not military, he's not police, he's not a professional, but he's a smart guy. He's able to get through a very dangerous environment all by himself by relying on his wits. The enemies that Isaac is dealing with in Dead Space are called necromorphs. It seems like a disease or some kind of, viral spread that infects dead tissue and brings it back alive, and it changes and warps it in different ways. Visually, we wanted them to be grotesque, but we wanted it to be grotesque in a way that reminded you that it at once was human, but it's been distorted. So necromorphs look human. You can see human parts, but at the same time they've been torn and twisted and parts have been ripped off. And so that was part of the horror, is like deciding how do we create a creature that is so scary, so spine-tingling that just looking at it scares you. A different angle, instead of having players shoot the head and the chest, would be to have them cut off the arms and the legs. And that's where the idea of strategic dismemberment came out. And actually, it works great on a number of levels, not just in terms of the game design, the gameplay, but in terms it fits perfectly with the story. These things are reanimated dead tissue, so you can't just fill and pull bullets, they're already dead. You have to actually think, all right, how can I chop off his limbs? If I cut off his legs, he'll come slower, but he'll still keep coming. Like if I chop off his arms, he won't be able to attack me quite as much, but maybe he'll get up close and try to vomit on me. It feels more tense if you have to be careful with your shots and you have to be precise, and if you have a limited amount of ammunition and if I shoot too many shots, if I'm not precise enough, then I won't be able to survive this encounter because the necromorph's going to come get me.
You have all of your senses at work. You've got, perhaps besides maybe not smell, but you have your visual senses, your audio, everything is pulling you into the story. Even when you watch a movie, you're not interacting with the movie, you're passive. And that's one of the big differences between video games and any other form of entertainment, I think, is the active nature of it, that you're participating. And I think that's what draws a lot of people into it. It sort of combines that element of sport where you're participating and interacting with it, but yet you're getting the visual stimulation and the audio stimulation of a movie, and the combination is killer.
And then you have that little third thing that I think is really impressive is that you can die, and that will determine sort of how things go for you in a game. The thing that games have that film and television have less of is the impact of the player. The player is, you could say, the film doesn't really exist if you don't see it, but in here, if you're not playing it, if you're not making choices, then the story is not being told. And that concept is so different from anything else in the history of popular culture or media at all.
My kids growing up with video games made them much better than I'll ever be at it. They have a brain-eye-hand coordination that I'll never have. And I think that translates into things like better surgeons, you know, perhaps better scientists, people that can work with their hands and their brains better. I actually think it actually builds a better cognitive kind of a skill set for younger kids nowadays.
Every player's experience is going to be unique. Every person who goes into a movie and sees Forrest Gump saw the same movie. You know, they may have sat in different seats in the theater, but they saw the same movie from the same perspective, and every single frame is identical. That's not the way it is with games at all. The storytellers have to accept that for the portions in which the player is in control of the game, that the player is controlling the camera. So despite that we may want the player to look at this over here, player can ignore us. Player can, you know, grief his own game. The player can make a total mess of our intended story. Of course, the player is who paid $60 for the game and can do whatever he wants with it. There's a point in Dead Space 2 where you have to restore power to the station by aligning the solar arrays on the outside of the station. So, you know, part of the story is that you have this objective to do so, but actually experiencing it when you as Isaac go into this elevator, you get up into the upper part of the space station, you have to actually exit into open space. You know, you hear that it sounds like you're walking around, oh, Isaac's very gravelly voice, and yeah, and plus the feeling of navigating around in three-dimensional space and floating, and then using your boot jets to fly out and grab those solar arrays and be able to move them in different directions and point them where you need to redirect the power. All that, the entire experience there is kind of like the player in collaboration with the storytellers creating the story. So the question is, where could this go, really? It's like, you know, does it make sense for games to try to emulate Hollywood by telling a linear story when essentially what game players enjoy the most is the opportunity to choose and go off in different directions and not have a linear experience?
One of the cool things about video games is that, you know, you have to achieve, you know, that you're being pulled to achieve to the next level. And I think it instills competitiveness, it instills goal achievement, and, you know, they're fun.